Welcome. Yeah, so recorded meeting for posterity, and we are grateful to have you all joining us today. We are expecting potentially upwards of 100 people. At least that's how many signed in for today or signed up for today. Uh, we have about 25 or so right now. So we'll make some room as they all join us along the way, but we're really grateful for your time and your energy on this. This is Deployment 103, which is the third in our series of learning collaboratives on deployment. The first two uh, related to pre-deployment and during deployment activities and considerations. And this is the what happens as you're ending your deployment and what to expect along those lines. So just a note here, we have muted everyone and not given you the option to unmute just because we thought we were going to have a lot of people on. So we may just stick with that for now. And so we want to invite you to use the chat to ask questions. And you're welcome to do that at any time during the program. We have a couple of folks that'll be monitoring that and will interrupt if big questions come up or ones that are immediate. But we will be spending some time answering questions at the end. So stick around for that as well. I'd like, though, before we get started with the content, I'd like to introduce some of the folks that are here with us today, who are helping to either deliver the program or offering their expertise in and experience in deployment. So joining us, you'll see Paula Tambasco, who's the director of the Bureau of Emergency Preparedness and Response here at the central office. Working with her is Mike Bigley, and we also have Pat Riley with us. We've got Latifa Williams, who's part of our team as well. Missing from our program today is Amy Dubose, who's actually out in Western New York. And I'm Skip Zimmerman. I'm the program coordinator for the Disaster Mental Health Program here. Joining us as well, and we'll hear from them later on in today's program, are three folks who have some experience with disaster mental health deployments or deployments in general. And we've asked them to share their experiences with how they ended deployments in the past. So we'll get to introduce them a little bit more deeply later on, but they are Dr. Michelle Stein, Brian Wojcik, and Peter Gall have joined us for today's program as well. So we're grateful to have you all on as we go. All right, as I mentioned, questions in the chat, and we will up anchor now and get moving. So by the way, we will have some links for you in the chat as well, so keep an eye out for those as we go. So let's talk a little bit really quickly about what we're going to cover today. So as we said, this is sort of addressing what happens as you leave a deployment. You've been through all of the process to get there. You've done the work. You have been deployed for a few hours or a few days. Well, what does it look like as you leave? So we're going to talk a little bit about just ending a shift if you're leaving just for a shift. And then also, and primarily, ending the deployment. What does it look like when you leave the disaster relief operation and you're headed back home for good? There is one element to that we would like to address in particular, and that is this notion of going from hero to zero. That can have some emotional impacts for folks, and it's certainly a thing that a lot of folks do find that they experience. So we'll address that as well. We'll talk a little bit about homeward travel, especially under the conditions of driving through areas that might be disaster affected, as well as sort of paying attention to what you're feeling or what you're thinking while you're headed home. And that leads us into self-care that's still important after deployment, as much as it is during deployment. We'll talk a little bit about checking in with some folks and people checking in with you as well. One of the practices that we intend to implement here is some form of how did things go for you, and are there any things that you need to tell us about after your deployment. So we want to make sure that you understand that process. Once again, we will talk a little bit about travel documentation and your process for getting reimbursed if you've expended anything. And then we'll just sort of address the notion of re-entering your regular life after the excitement of a disaster relief operation. So recapping our last learning collaborative, which was that it really described what happens during a deployment. So we talked about some challenges. We talked about what to expect as you arrive. We wanted to make sure people understood that there will be a shift supervisor who's identified and what their role is. And that even goes so far as to say that all of you may end up being a shift supervisor if you're deployed, because we typically choose that person or those people from amongst those who have deployed. So it could be any of us at any time. We did underscore this notion that we really want you to be working in teams of two. That doesn't mean that you're in the, two of you are in the face of a client at the same time, but that you're supporting each other in a way that you're nearby and can help each other. But that led us to the rule of three, which is we are never alone with a client during disaster mental health work. So rule of three means that you're with two clients or you and a worker are with one client, so that we avoid things like accusations of bad behavior and things like that. We talked a little bit about reporting. Again, we hit the travel conversation and what to expect there. We did hear from some folks who have deployed. So if you get a chance to look at the video of that and the recording of that 102, you'll hear them. And then we talked about the resources that we will always bring with us when we deploy folks, so that you have handouts and toys and games for kids and suggested items for use with clients along the way. So that was our deployment 102. Today, we are going back into our deployment scenario, and this is the same scenario we've used for all three of these learning collaboratives now. So I'll just read this to you really quickly. And whenever we talk about an exercise, we always identify it as an exercise before and after we talk about it. So this is an exercise, want to be clear about that. The remnants of Hurricane Moira have left significant flooding and a hot, humid air mass across Delaware, Greene, Schoharie, and Otsego counties. The first three counties have requested disaster mental health support at their combination shelter/cooling stations. And Otsego County is expected to make a similar request within the next 2 days. Each county is operating one shelter and cooling facility. It's expected that 4 responders and 1 supervisor will be needed at each facility for 2 4.5-hour shifts per day. So that's a total of 40 responders each day. And the response is expected to last for 6 days. So just right there, you get a sense that if we ever had to deploy 40 people per day, that kind of goes to why we've trained as many of you as we've trained. We have about 300 or 340 of you, I think it is up to now, who have been trained across the state at each of our psychiatric centers. So, and that's why, because if we get a big one, there's going to be a lot of people that need to get out there and get working. So some additional information about this deployment scenario. You can see populations for each of those counties, and you see they average somewhere around 40-ish, 45, something like that. And then we have some conditions. So we've had 7 people that have died, including 2 small children. 50 individuals are still missing. About 120,000 customers are without power, and it's going to take about 6 days for that to come back. So that's a lot of homes that have been affected. Of the 600 affected, 190 are destroyed, 300 are damaged, and 110 are cut off from services. So they may be isolated. So we've got lots of road closures, and that's the condition that we're going into. And just to be clear, this is an exercise. So our first activity comes up, and that's going to be something called a Slido. Now, what's going to happen here is you're going to end up out on the internet, either on your browser or on your phone. And there's a couple ways to get to that. So you can either use your phone and take a picture of the QR code that's up here on the right to get there, or you can click the link that Latifa put into the chat, or you can navigate to slido.com and then enter the code that is on this slide. And that code, and maybe Latifa, you'll put the code in too, that's 343-2192. 343-2192. Give you a couple seconds to get there, because once you're there, you're going to see a question pop up that you can answer either on your browser or on your phone. And the first question, I think I'm going to slide there. Latifa, are you able to put that that code into the chat?
Apologies, the first link is not working. I'm resending the second one.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Okay. So the second link there that says Slido on it, if you can click on that, or if you want to take a picture of the QR code with your phone camera, that should get you there as well. And the code, as Latifa put in, is 343-2192. All right, a couple more seconds, and then I'll flip to the next slide, and that'll put the question up for us. And here we go. So where's my question? The question didn't come up. This is interesting and unexpected. Let's go back to here. Ah, it popped. So you're all seeing what I'm seeing. It pops up and then it goes away, right?
Yes.
Well,
it's
the
just a white
question,
screen.
so we're going to try this a little bit differently, and we might have to do this in the chat. But the question is, what challenges do you think you might face post deployment? So as you leave, let's go back to this. As you leave this scenario, we're leaving from a deployment to these counties, and there's been significant flooding. There's power still out, things like that. You're leaving. What challenges might you encounter? And I'm going to invite you to put your answers into the chat, because the Slido does not appear to be working the way we expected it to. We practiced this yesterday and it was working fine, so I'm not sure what the deal is. But what challenges might you expect to face as you leave a deployment? You've been at the deployment for a few hours, maybe a couple of days or so. Maybe you've made some friends. Maybe you've talked to a lot of people who are emotionally distraught. Maybe you're tired. So in the chat, we're seeing dealing with survivor guilt, moving away from destroyed areas towards safer areas. Yep, roads flooded and closed. It might be difficult to leave. Power lines could still be down, right? We're also dealing with things like loss and grief. Alicia says something about maybe feeling guilty and a desire to follow up. Like maybe there's some unfinished business with some of the clients, things like that, right? Feeling exhausted, coming home to small children or anybody that might want to tax your time and your energy, even though you might not have it, right? We might be still dealing with loss of electricity. We might be dealing with loss of life, people who are hurt, getting reintegrated back into life again, going home to your own children. Yep. Especially when people might have lost theirs. Yeah, that can be particularly poignant for us, right? We may have our own trauma from this, and we may be wrestling with some limited resources. Well, thank you for going with your flexibility as we have adjusted our approach here, but those are great thoughts, and we will be addressing many of those in the rest of today's program. So thank you for that. Okay, so moving to the next slide here, we're going to turn this over now to Pat, who may riff a little bit on what you all put in the chat, because Pat's going to talk a little bit more about ending a deployment. So Pat, feel free to take a little when you're ready.
All right, good afternoon. So we're going to be talking here really for the next slide or so about ending a deployment. First, we want to go over ending a shift. So if you're on a deployment that has multiple shifts, at the end of each shift, there are going to be things that you're going to need to do, as well as when you actually end the deployment and head home. So first and foremost, when you are ending your shift, you should always try to do a good changeover. So that's attending a changeover brief or having a brief discussion with those who are coming in. Usually when we tell people when they're coming onto a shift, we want them to get there a little bit early so they can have that conversation with whoever they're replacing. Same thing goes for you when you're leaving your shift. Make sure they have all the information they need. Make sure you're doing a good handoff. Are there any hazards? Or what happened in the shift during your shift? What can they think? What can they expect to happen in the shift coming up? Are there any outstanding issues? Make sure you're submitting any reports or documentation. And also check your schedule. Make sure you know when your next shift is. Sometimes you may be on one shift and then it may skip a shift and you'll be back to a following shift. And always make sure contact information is shared between you and your shift supervisor or somebody there at the site, because responses and deployments are fluid and can change quickly. So now we're going to go into the ending of a deployment. So when we're ending a deployment, things may change from deployment to deployment. As a responder, you're going to find that each deployment may bring something different. However, there's always going to be a couple of things that are going to be the same. There's going to be similarities between each deployment. One thing that will always remain the same, no matter the deployment, is accountability. So when you're leaving your last shift for any deployment, it's important that you do that good handoff like we talked about during the shift changeover. Let people know what's been going on, if there are any future plans, what the ins and outs of the shift and the site itself are. Make sure you sign up. Can we please, anybody who's not muted, can you mute, please? Okay. So what's been going on? Are there any future plans? You must also sign out of your shift. Usually there's a sign in or sign out sheet to track personnel on site. This sheet is generally used to make sure the site supervisor or manager has accountability of all the personnel there. They use this information for tracking of meals, safety issues or emergencies, and also to be able to know what resources are available to survivors or visitors to the site. When you're leaving and you're getting ready to travel home, make sure you have adequate rest. Try to at least take a couple hours before you, if you can, before you make that travel plan home. Just make sure you're ready to travel. Make sure someone in your home office is aware of your travel plans back from deployment. Letting somebody know from your organization when you plan on leaving and when you plan on being home. And then once you get back to your home station, make sure you let somebody know you've arrived safely. And also, once you get back to work, your team lead may want to discuss your deployment with you. Things you may have seen on that deployment may be able to lead and inform future deployments. All right, now we're going to talk about the travel home. So we're going to talk about some hazards like exhaustion or distracted driving. And we're going to talk about some feelings that we might be going through at the end of our deployment. So first things first, you may be both physically and emotionally drained from your time at your response site. So try to make sure, again, like I said before, you have adequate rest before heading home. Plan stops along the route if you're traveling a long distance. Distracted driving. So many times when we're leaving a deployment, our thoughts are still on the response, or they could be on how it will be when we get home and get back to our regular lives. Make sure you're staying focused. Again, if you have to, take small breaks along your trip so you can get out, take a breath, and refocus on the driving home. Then we get into the feelings. We may have a wide range of emotions that can be overwhelming at times. Some of these are going to be sadness, feeling empathy for those who have been devastated, frustration, feeling that you could have done more or that you didn't do enough. There's also fulfillment, pride in a job well done, as well as gratitude, gratefulness for those that were there to help in a time of need. All of these things could hinder your travel home. That's why it's so important to contact someone you know at your home office, either your supervisor or your team lead when leaving the site, and also when you've arrived home safe. Next slide. All right, now we're going to get into what we refer to, or what I refer to as hero to zero. This is something, a concept that was actually brought up during my time in the military when I was coming back from deployment from Iraq. A lot of times when you do a reintegration training, they talk about those feelings you're going to have when you're returning to what's called so-called normal life. When the adrenaline is no longer there, coursing through your body and keeping you moving, when the hectic day-to-day of the response fades away and the quiet sinks in and it gets back to regular. So quite often that transition brings about certain feelings. And again, we use the term hero to zero. Hero referring to that time during the deployment, the excitement when you're feeling part of something larger than yourself. You're helping those in need. You're in the thick of things. During that hero phase, you have that adrenaline rush, the fast pace of the response, and assisting those in recovery. And it's a great feeling. But then when we leave the deployment and all the adrenaline fades away and the quiet, either on the travel home or while we're at home, you get that feeling of the zero. After the rush and when we return home, that excitement's no longer there. You may have feelings of despair, sadness, frustration. You may go through the feeling of being left behind. The response will go on without you. You may think that there are things you could have done better or things you may have left undone. And there's always going to be more folks that you could have helped. So you may be processing these emotions, and it's perfectly normal to feel these things. You also may be processing any missteps or perceived mistakes that were made during the deployment. And you're also going back to that normal day-to-day, which somehow seems less important than the actual deployment and the response to a devastating event. All this, again, is perfectly normal. And I know we keep highlighting just how important self-care is. And when going through this type of transition, it's definitely very important.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I appreciate that a lot. And I think this is a topic that we all want to be paying attention to. It's that the notion of transitioning back and taking the time to do that in a thoughtful manner. So thank you, Pat. Appreciate that. We're going to turn now to Mike, who's going to lead us through a discussion about the check-in after the fact, after you're back home. So Mike, take it away when you're ready. Mike, you may still be muted.
Yeah, I was saying the phone was ringing, so I didn't want to jump on too fast. And we got that taken care of. The everything that Pat was just talking about how you go home and how you deploy, there's two more steps to that. One of which is when you're actually back, and then we'll talk a little bit later about the self-care on the way. But the mental health checks, it's really always been a state of what we do with responders, a state of getting debriefings at the end of every event. So you want to talk with someone, probably your team lead, about how things are going and how you did what you experienced, and just a quick check-in. I made it back. I'm on time. I didn't fall asleep at the wheel, and I saw some things that bothered me, but nothing too serious. I was very, very busy because half the population of those counties was going through those shelters. So they were very, very busy, and I'm okay. Then there's, how did it work organizationally? Reportable incidents? Did you see behaviors? Did you see hazards? Are there things that became problems and challenges? Did you run into unexpectedly difficult citizen and victims, survivors to deal with? Um, and any suggestions for improvement? So this part of it is important. And not only should it happen when you get back immediately, but if several members of your facility, team, whichever, are there together, it might be very good to have a group meeting, a debriefing for the whole group where people share a little bit about their ideas for improvement, their challenges they faced perhaps, and what they would do the next time if they have a next time. This is a very big deployment. So because of the size of it and the numbers and as Skip said early on, 40 people a day, it's really going to be an important thing to get back together and talk about the incident and its organizational things, the problems, processes, challenges, and suggestions for self-support, if nothing else. Change the slides, Skip. Thank you. So here's the real self-care issues. Having been through deployments, and I know Patrick would tell you that this is a big deal. So the first thing is take some time. Take some time between when you get out of, finish putting in your last documents and going out the door. And before you get in your car, take a breath. Reflect a little bit on what you're leaving, reflect a little bit on where you're going. Assess yourself. Can I really get in the car right now? You have a second time to take a breath when you get in the car. And I would suggest, if it's been as busy as I think it will have been, that you decide, I'm going to go for a coffee. I may even have a hamburger, and I'll be home after that. So call people and let them know that you're coming home and you won't be right away, but you'll be there soon. This is about you having a chance to personally calm down from what may have been a very exciting time, if not traumatic time. Think about how you're feeling. Think about the reintegration, some of the limited resources, some of the other, you're tired, you're feeling, some guilt you may feel, or some survivor guilt, or some guilt about missing a child's event for some reason, because you had to go. All these things are things you should deal with as you're going, and take your time to do it. That's why the coffee and the burger might be helpful. The hero to zero thing, the very worst thing that happens to a lot of people as they're trying to readjust is somebody at home says, well, now that you're back, you can do this. So be prepared for that. You weren't on vacation. You weren't just out playing golf for the last 6 hours. So have the time to prepare for what you want to do when you get there. So just as you reflected on how you were going to leave your site, now you're going to reflect on how you're going to go into your home. So, meet people, explain where you've been, answer their questions, and then do something normal with them. It may be mowing the lawn. It may be taking them in the backyard to play. It may be going to a restaurant for dinner. It may be doing lots of things, but it's all to be normal, to stop worrying about the event at the recovery center or shelter where you were. So the last part of this is you may be going back tomorrow morning. So how will you feel? How will you do what you might want to think would be a better way to approach it? And what will you do between now and then? And how will you be more ready and have your family more ready for the next time, whether it's the next day or the next week? Any questions? No?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And if people do have questions, again, we want to invite you to put those into the chat.
Yep.
And looks like we have a few enough people that we can probably unmute later on at the end and ask questions live that way
Yeah, I
as
would
well.
agree. Good.
But Mike, thank you very much for that. Some really, again, some more thoughtful approaches here, especially in dealing with folks who might have expectations of you when you return. So you're putting a little bit of distance between the experience of the deployment and your return into your regular life or your regular routines, um, so that you can buffer some of that. Well, now we're going to turn to Latifa, who is going to take some time to introduce three folks who have actually deployed and ask them about their experiences when they disengage. So Latifa, would you like to jump in now?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. So as we talk about post-deployment, we asked three of our OMH colleagues to share their experiences. And so that first up, we have Dr. Michelle Stein from Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center, excuse me, who went on a recent deployment in August with regard to Steuben County. And Dr. Stein, can you open it up and share with us what was your experience as you disengaged from deployment? We want to make sure she's unmuted.
I did do that, but somehow it's not unmuting. So give me one moment, and Dr. Stein, I'm going to make you a co-host, and that should help us here. Get you unmuted. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself now, Dr. Stein. Co-host. Oh, because I'm sorry, Dr. Stein, you're on a telephone. So let me unmute that as well. To find the telephone. Dr. Stein, I'll tell you what, let's move to the next person. Dr. Stein, if you could in the chat to me privately, if you could put the phone number that you're calling from, I will do what I can to unmute that from our end. And you may
Okay.
need to
So
unmute from your end as well.
We'll come back to Dr. Stein. Next up, we're going to have Brian Wojcik from a social worker with Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center, and who also participated in the deployment in August with regard to Steuben County. Brian, can you share with us your experience as you disengaged from the Steuben County flooding deployment?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it went really well. It seemed like we were told like what we were likely to see, and I feel like everyone that was coming like knew what they needed, and I felt very much like we were a presence that was appreciated. I had my situation leaving is a little different because it was my birthday the next day, so I was kind of
Okay.
focused on that. So yeah, I didn't really have any of the letdown. I can understand why it would happen, but for me, it was like I had a ride partner that I had a really good conversation with on the way up, and we continued it on the way back. There was definitely some roads that we weren't really sure if they were closed or not, and we kind of went down some of them that didn't have signs that they were closed, but we were like, maybe it is, and we got through them. But we were always on the lookout for if we need to turn around, we will. But that was probably the scariest part and the most difficult part of going back, like just knowing some of these bridges were out not too long ago, and there's now people working on fixing them, and I don't know if we're going to be going the right way, even though our GPS says we are. So yeah, just like keeping an eye out for like how to get where you need to go was my main concern and Nicole's main concern.
Thank you. So, and thank you for sharing that. I think it speaks to the first thing we talked about, Pat mentioned around just the drive home, and being in an area that was deeply impacted by a weather-related event. And then, so what does that mean for you, one, getting there, while you're there, and then also leaving? So thank you for sharing that, because those are all things that, depending on the situation, you might experience. So thank you.
Okay, we should be able to hear from Dr. Stein, although Dr. Stein, you're still muted. I have made you a co-host and I've also unmuted you from our end. And by the way, I've given everybody the opportunity to unmute at this stage. So please don't do that unless you're presenting for the moment. But Dr. Stein, can you unmute and then can we hear from you? I still see that you're muted on our end. I'm going to send you a message that says request unmute.
Okay. So while we're working out the technical piece, Peter Gall is also with us. Oh, I see you, Peter. I was going to say, I hope you can unmute mute. Peter is with the Long Island field office and tons of experience in this area. And so we asked him to share about his post-deployment experience with, was Hurricane Maria?
Yep.
Yes. So I will give you the floor if you can share with us what your experience was.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking your time to listen to my little vignette about my experience out at JFK Airport and Hurricane Maria. I think it'd be a little bit helpful if I set the stage a little bit and explain how this all kind of fell out. So as you know, in 2017, Hurricane Maria came through, I want to say the Southern Atlantic, up the coast and hit Puerto Rico pretty hard. At that time, there were a lot of people being displaced. There was no power, not access to water. They were considering, from I believe, from the New York State Department of Homeland Security, sending out teams to Puerto Rico. I don't know whether it actually came to fruition or not. However, my role was to get together with some people out at JFK Airport and help those that were being displaced coming back to the United States or the domestic United States into JFK Airport, and how to help them, gather benefits, reach family, gather basic materials, clothes, food, water, whatever. The challenge is that most of the people coming back from Puerto Rico were native Spanish-speaking individuals. Guess what? I don't speak Spanish. So the person that was due to meet out there was a native Spanish speaking person. So that was very comforting to me. So when we got out there, or when I say I got out there, because I was due to meet the individual at the terminal where the planes were supposed to be coming in, I went to use a state vehicle. So I at that time I had been the day at the field office, took the afternoon, drove into Queens, and got into JFK. Anybody knows JFK, it's not necessarily the easiest environment to navigate all the time. Certainly with traffic and changing of parking and all of that. So that adds a little bit of a adventure to it, I'd like to say. So I got that accomplished. I got to the terminal where they were supposed to be debarking. However, they shifted our reception area down to the baggage claim where the individuals would be receiving their baggage. It had more room, it was quieter, and it afforded more space for people to kind of gather and table there. So that took a little bit of a coordination effort. So I was able to meet the individual that was the Spanish speaking person to help me, help those people with resources and things like that. However, another adventure came along our way and they shifted to allow us to have multiple terminals open at the same time. And I want to say that they had multiple baggage claims going at the same time. However, it seemed like the information that I was getting was everybody was going to be coming into this particular baggage claim. So again, kind of the fear or the idea is that you're going to be overwhelmed with people coming in. So we set up shop, everything kind of went well. We didn't see that many people because unfortunately some of these flights actually got diverted to Newark or to other airports. So I arrived at JFK sometime toward the dinner time hour. I want to say 5:30, something like that. And I stayed till the better part of about 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock, for the last flight to get in. So it was not a long deployment, but it was a kind of intense. At the time, I had helped people. I had used the language line. I had used Google Translate. I used all the tools that I had available to me. I brought along with me some games and some coloring books and things for children because as we know, when kids fly and they get off the plane, they're itching to run and itching to do things and they don't want to sit still. And of course, mom and dad and everybody else wants to get information and sit and talk, and kids don't want to do that. So I brought plenty of supplies for that. I also brought a case of water. I also brought other notepads and pens and stickers and cards so that they had contact information ready and available for them. They seem to appreciate that immensely in multiple languages. But then, kind of getting to the after end of the deployment, I closed up shop. There was nobody coming in. The last flight had arrived. Nobody had come off the flight looking for help. I contacted my other people that were there at JFK and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to check out now. I think our flights have come in. A couple of people were late waiting around for another flight to come in. So I made my way from the baggage claim back out to the parking lot. In that time, I did call my supervisor, Dr. Martha Carlin, who was super, super, super supportive to me. She talked with me very briefly. She goes, I know you're probably exhausted and overwhelmed, and if you need some time to take to yourself, go ahead. And she was really meaning in the moment, like if you need like a half an hour before we kind of debrief or just check in, that's fine. I said, no, I'm good. We can talk. And we did. We talked for about, 10, 15 minutes, just to what did I expect? What did I see? Kind of were there any challenges? Anything that she needed to be aware of to follow up on in the interim. And she directed me to take the next half a day off, basically giving me time to kind of, decompress and to kind of do some self-care. She specifically mentioned that. I was very happy with that. She was super supportive. I can't say that enough. So on the drive home, you kind of go through this sort of, and before I say this, is that I hear the pitch about, making sure you're able to drive because you will be distracted. Absolutely. My thoughts were about who I had contact with, what conversations I had, what resources I gave, did I give enough resources? All those questions start to go through your mind. Fortunately, it was a nice drive home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's on the road. I'm doing good. I was kind of awake. I had multiple cups of coffee, so I was doing okay as far as being awake was concerned. But my mind was definitely kind of going there. And then, kind of as the drive kind of came on, you started to feel a little bit more physical fatigue, because not only did I, walk from the parking lot to the terminal to the baggage claim, but I walked back to the terminal. I did a lot of walking in between. And, it's not that it's not hard exercise or very physically demanding exercise, but, you're trying to figure out where you're going. You're trying to find the most efficient way to get there. JFK is never seemingly straightforward. So it was a little bit of a physical nature of exhaustion as well. But I really felt like when I got home, that's kind of when it hit me. It was like, wow, I've just been through a pretty intense time with a bunch of different people, a bunch of different contacts. It took me a good, I'd say, half an hour to an hour and a half to really kind of decompress in my head before I was able to hit the pillow and go to sleep. And then, once I rose the next day, I kind of took some time to myself. I, had a nice breakfast. I slept in a little bit. And then I hit, work, 12, 1 o'clock the next day. And I immediately met with my supervisor again, Dr. Carlin, and we had a kind of more of a full debrief of like what exactly happened, who did you talk to, how many people did you contact with, what resources did you give, and questions, what questions I had and kind of thoughts. And, her being a clinical psychologist, it was very easy for her to kind of sort of play both roles, of the administrator and the therapist there, because I was definitely feeling it. I was feeling the impact of all those people coming off those planes and how scared they must have been and not knowing the native language of New York, and where to go and how to get there, and just watching their faces, how they were so appreciative that somebody was there to greet them and give them some direction, even if it was pointing them to the exit. It was just, you could see that they had a sense of relief about that. So I was very happy about that. It gave me that sense of fulfillment. But nevertheless, you always felt like, what if there were more people? What if there were, other concerns that came up, excuse me, that I wasn't able to answer? So all those questions sort of started to come to the surface. We did get through it. All in all, I think it was a wonderful experience. I was glad to help people. And it certainly was an adventure. So,
Well, thank you, Peter. I feel like I got the full, I mean, obviously wasn't there, but got your full, a glimpse into your full experience. In terms of what the deployment was like. I think also a reminder to be flexible, as you talked about, right? Getting to JFK, where are you going? And then they changed the meeting location. That's something we always ask people and remind everyone in doing this work to please be flexible, because things do change. Really, and you don't always have a lot of notice. And then having that support afterward to debrief and to talk. And share and get some feedback and also get some rest. So thank you for sharing your full experience. That's hopefully very helpful to everyone.
very welcome.
Thank you.
We are
Dr.
back.
Stein, are you here?
Yeah, Dr. Stein,
Yes, I'm
Dr.
here.
Stein, we're gonna have to limit just to a couple minutes because we're a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit behind, okay? But thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, I don't have much to say. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a psychologist in OMH, Mid Hudson Forensic, and so I went, as they have up there, I went for the Steuben County flooding in August. Myself and another person at the facility who is a social worker by profession came with me, and I think that was really key, is having a buddy to go with. It really made a difference. It was about like a 3-hour drive for us, so we stayed over the one night, and it wasn't that intense. Skip was there, and there was a lot of the people didn't really want to talk to us, or weren't interested explicitly in mental health, so we just kind of talked to people. So it was a flooding. There wasn't any loss of life. There was loss of people's homes, which was very sad, but it wasn't like the worst situation you could be in. So the deployment itself went well, and what we did to kind of de-stress and everything was, we were 3 hours away, so we went back to the hotel that night, and the two of us spoke about our experience together extensively, and that was really helpful. And then we were like, oh, we're so far away from home. There's a lot of beautiful waterfalls up here. We both like to go hiking. So we decided the next morning, before we headed all the way back, that we would go check out Watkins Glen State Park. And that boosted our moods, and was a really good end to the deployment, kind of, because we just, got to see some beautiful things, spend some time out in nature together. Then we went out for a nice brunch, and then drove back, and we were exhausted just, from driving both ways and from meeting with people. It was, 1-day deployment. So when we went back, we technically could have gone into work, but we decided we're not in the space or time to go back to work today. Why don't we, take another day? And so we went in the next day, and on our way back, and actually throughout the deployment, we kept in touch with our DMH team lead here at the hospital, who was also very helpful, Melinda Delazar. So we debriefed with her throughout, and then we had another staff member that we work with that was going to the deployment by himself for the second day. So we were able to talk to him as well and kind of support him pre and post deployment. So I think, yeah, having that buddy system and supportive people, taking the rest of the day off work and doing something fun and for us was the best way to deal with that.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you all made sure you took care of yourselves.
Yes.
Nice change of scenery. Thank you for sharing,
Yeah.
and thank you for your patience.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's good to be on. Thank you all.
Okay. So just a couple things, reminder, as we wrap up around travel, please work with your supervisor and or your business office to obtain a travel card. You'll often hear them referred to as T cards. And I'm dropping in the chat for you, sorry, the sites where you can get additional information if needed. But again, you want to make sure that once you are back at work, you take care of any travel expenses.
And Latifa, if I can just interject on that, really important, everybody, if you've not already gotten yourself a T card, a travel card, that's going to be the most important element for you to do to be ready for deployment. Those travel cards, those T cards are very, very helpful, and you'll need them for hotel accommodations, if you're renting vehicles, if you're not taking a state vehicle, and things like that along the way. So please work with your supervisor on that, and you can get all that information at the links that Latifa shared in the chat. All right, well, that has brought us to the end of our time together. So Latifa, I may be stealing your thunder. I think you were going to do this slide.
No, go ahead.
But yeah, so just, if there's one point we're making here, it's that we really want you to take care of yourself. You're basically a house plant with more complicated emotions. So be aware of that. Don't forget to drink some water and get some sun. As Michelle did when they were on their way out, they went for a hike. That was a great idea. So we have a couple of minutes left. So we're happy to take some questions. I did, as I said, I unmuted everybody, or at least I gave you the option to unmute as we were trying to fix our tech issues. So if you would like to unmute and ask a question, or if you'd like to put something into the chat, please feel free to do that. We'll be happy to address those now. And if you'd like to, we can stay on afterward if it's a deeper question or a singular kind of question. But what kind of questions are coming up for you now as you think about leaving a deployment and re-entering your lives back home? Well, I'm not hearing anybody unmuting. We'll give it a few more seconds to see if people are typing into the chat. But in the meantime, we'll just say how grateful we are for your time, for your energy, not only for being with us today on this learning collaborative, but also just for your commitment to the disaster mental health program, for your willingness to peel away from your families, from your jobs, from your day-to-day lives to come out and help other people who are really suffering in the moment. We hope that you have engaged with the training so far and felt good about that. We will be conducting additional learning collaboratives on specific topics throughout the next year. And that we hope will be one of the ways that we keep you engaged in between disasters, because as we know, disasters don't happen every day. So again, thank you all so much for your time, for your energy. Peter, Michelle, and Brian, thank you for jumping on and helping us understand your experiences. We're very grateful for that as well. And stay on if you have questions, and we'll be happy to anticipate those questions with you as we go. I do see one question, if you'd like to stay on and listen, although different terrains may need different terrains, will need different gear, but is there something for sure that those who have been deployed see as a good thing to always bring? Yeah, so one of the things we're going to be providing for you is a deployment guide. It's almost ready, and that will have a list of items to take with you. I would say just in terms of dress, you should dress as if you're going to be outdoors and hiking. Layers are really important depending on the weather. You can peel some layers off. You can put some more layers on if you need to. Sturdy shoes. You never know where you're going to be or what you're going to have to walk through to get to where you're going to be working. So it's important. You know, flip flops are probably not a great idea, right?
But also
Okay.
make sure they're comfortable shoes too, because even if you're in a resource center, you're going to be on your feet all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Thank you, Pat.
I'm actually, I'm signed up this week. This is Michelle. I'm signed up to take the emergency preparedness course for New York State on Thursday.
Oh, great, great. So what Michelle's talking about is the Citizen Preparedness Corps training, which is available all across the state and virtually. And we will be happy to share links for that to you later on. We'll do that via email and through a SharePoint that we are also still working on to make sure that you have resources available to you. That's one of them, and that's a recommended training. Not required, but it is Michelle, do you have a sense of how long it is? I think it might be an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah, they when I called and talked to them, they said that it would probably be about an hour, and I thought about it with the supplies because they say that they give you a decent, like they give you a backpack full of
Yeah.
disaster emergency preparedness supplies. So I'm excited about that. I had recommended it to another friend who works here. She was able to go to one a couple months ago, and she said it was great.
Good. They are available online. You won't get the backpack with all the supplies in it if you do it online, but if you do find one in person, and they are happening all over the state, you will likely get one of the backpacks as well. And that has things in it mainly for your family to be prepared. So it actually has 3 days worth of food. It's not very good food. It's energy bars kind of thing. It's 3 days worth of water, but they'll also talk with you about how to make a plan for your family so that you can be well prepared when a disaster strikes. Things like reunification plans if you're separated, communication plans if the cell towers are down. How are you going to talk to your family if they're in 2 or 3 different locations? That sort of thing. So it's very well worthwhile. And yes, Latifa will provide those links for you. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time again today. We are so grateful for you being part of the program and for you being with us today. And we'll see you next time. Okay. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.